Herzlich willkommen. A very warm welcome. Please take a seat. Is everyone able to sit down somewhere? I see some people standing. Please, everyone, I hope everyone gets to sit. It's so wonderful that so many people are here. My name is Christoph Reiner. I'm over the moon happy to be able to guide you through this wonderful evening to this special occasion. We are in the middle of the International Production Design Week. Some of you might have never heard of the International Production Design Week, but it is an extraordinary global undertaking. Over 300 events worldwide are taking place this week from the 17th of October to the 26th of October. There are many, many events, panels, lectures, screenings, tours in over 30 countries, in over 20 universities. A lot of things are going on, and it brings together filmmakers, students, educators, design enthusiasts across all time zones and cultures. And just as we speak right now, there is in Prague a panel discussion with the art direction team of Jojo Rabbit and All Quiet on the Western Front. In Mexico City, just as we speak right now, is a screening with followed by a Q&A with the production designer of Roma. And in New York, at the Center of Architecture, they are about to wrap up a panel discussion with the team of The Brutalist. But you are here in Vienna at the absolute the peak of all of it. We're gonna have a great evening together. We're gonna have a presentation of LEDcave, followed by a presentation, the Q&A with Johannes Mücke to the epic gladiator show, Those About to Die. And before we start, I do want to also welcome someone on stage. He's one of the heads of the FÖF, the Austrian Designers Association, which is all year round designing movies events where we're presenting new movies and their production design, and we're promoting production design and production designers. And I'm so happy that he's here now. He's the 3-time winner of the Austrian Film Academy Awards for movies like Hidden Reserves, Good Night Mommy, and also Quo Vadis Aida. Please, let's have a huge round of applause for Hannes Salat.
Hello. God. I'm so happy that you're here. So many people from really from the branch. It's so great to present to you what we can do with this big LED wall, and we have it in Vienna. That's really something great that we have the studios here and we have this LED volume, and yeah, it's really great that you're all here. And we are for custom designers too. All the talks we make, not just for production design. And yeah, I wanted to just to thank our collaborators. It's on the first side. The first is the HQ7 Studios here. Arno Shankar, who is running it with all his team, and yeah, the second one is the LEDcave. It's this a company who runs this screen, and they're really great people working with it, and it's really great to work with them. And AFA Pro, who is running it too in Austria, and Ari Rental is here on the area, is supporting us all the time for events. And then there is a catering company, Simple Events, who's here on the area. He's helping us. And last but not least, ÖFI and VDFS, who gave us, supports us with money that we can do something like that. That's something really huge. This other events are not so huge. It's the first one that we make something at this scale. It's really a big issue to make something like that, and I'm so proud that we can do this. Thank you.
Hannes Salat. And with that, we are going to start, and I'm thrilled to be now giving up the microphone, and we are starting with the presentation. Enjoy.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Katja. I'm project manager, project coordinator at LEDcaves in all over Germany, and I'd like to explain virtual production and how it works, or virtual production on LED, how it works a little bit more in that evening. So let's have a look. To explain it in an easy way, as already mentioned in the movie, take the LED wall as a huge window. That window is your view into a 3D world. That 3D world has been created by Unreal Engine, gaming engines, Blender, whatever, so something with 3D. And you just put that LED wall, that window, which is, in that case, it's a pretty big window, it's 20 by 6.50 meter. You just put it in that wall and you can have a look into that world through that window. So my colleague Timo is going to show you how that looks on his screen when he's controlling that one. So when you're moving that window, of course, your perspective in that LED world, not LED world, 3D world, changes perspective, of course. You can push that window through that world. It really depends on how detailed that world has been created, because if you push that window towards the edge, of course, you only see the edge. You don't see anything anymore. So that's one part of how virtual production works in an easy way. Then you've got the track camera. You've got something like a tracking or a tracker on the camera, and then the camera knows where in that world it is sitting at the moment, and then it gives you the perspective. The special thing about that is once you move the camera sidewise, you can have a look, for example, from the side on the tree, not just from the front. So while we are moving, there is what is called a parallax shift. So, as I already said, that world was created with Unreal Engine, which is a gaming engine. And then, of course, if you have a look on the wall directly, you might have the opinion that it looks a little bit gamey. So that means with a virtual production, it's always important that you don't focus on the LED wall or the medium that shows you the content in behind. You always take a focus on the camera picture, and that is what you're creating. So that is where your result comes to, what you should be focusing on. Another thing with a virtual production, what you can see here is the combination of the digital set construction, which is in that way the 3D world, and then you have got what I normally call it the analog set construction. So while you're combining the analog set construction, which can be a tree, it can be a rock, or just referring to your contents, you put it in the front, and then you have got in the back the digital set construction. So then your eye get mixed up, both of them, and it gets harder for the eye to tell what is digital and what is the analog one. Yeah, so why do we do it in an LED studio? Why don't we go out there for the special in the mountains or anything? I tell you, there's so many advantages to be in front of an LED screen and in the studio. For example, you have got controlled environments. So that sunshine, we can do it the whole day. While once you go into the mountains, you really have to wait for the special point when the sun is in the right angle, and then you have got probably, let's call it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then it's gone. And then you have to wait for the next day. So that's one advantage. If you would have a shooting day in the mountains and you need that sunshine, and then there's rain forecast for about 5 days, you're not able to do anything. Over here, you just switch on the studio, you switch on the LED wall, you set a little bit of light, and then you have got your environment, and you don't have to wait 5 days till you can start. So that's another advantage. You can see somebody waiting there. He's waiting for his part of that moment, because you can do controlled stunts in here, of course. You can pretend that somebody who had a look down the hill, and now he convinced himself, it's not that deep, I can jump. See? No one was hurt. Okay. Another huge advantage, of course, of the virtual production is you can change your locations pretty easy and pretty quick. So you don't have a lot of travels, you don't have a lot of travel days, you don't have to move your whole unit base. You can just, switch on another environment, which takes you probably about 2 minutes. Let's prove. Let's change that environment. So you can see there's no truck coming. There's no tear down of cameras. There's no reset up of cameras. You can see there's just people coming in, dragging in stuff. They don't have to go out there because we prepared everything. Did somebody have a look? How long did it take? Was it 2 minutes? It wasn't 2 minutes, was it? And now it took you not even 2 minutes to move from the mountains, the snowy mountains, into a cozy living room. So how about that? I have to be honest, of course, I'm now talking like it's that easy. The thing with the virtual production on LED is a lot of people tell you you don't have a lot of post-production costs anymore. You don't, if you prepare it in the right way. So a lot of the effort you originally put into the post-production, you have to put into the pre-production. You really have to think about what you want to do, where you want to do, how you want to create your environments, and, for example, what do you want to change probably on set, what you're not really satisfied at the moment when your idea came up for the set, what you probably want to change. So, and then there is the option, if you're really prepared it in a good way, that you can easily take things out of that world and just shift it somewhere. I guess Timo has got something prepared, has he? So that's the thing where you don't have something prepared? Or do we want to move the picture? Okay, you see, of course, also in virtual production, not everything is perfect, and you really have to prepare it. So I'm just... Originally, the idea was to shift the pictures on the wall, which you can just take and shift it on another position, which is, when it is prepared, pretty easy. So, Timo, is that something you can do? Okay, I get that finger. So that's live. Of course, it is live. If you ask yourself who I'm talking to, it's Timo. Timo is our media operator, and he controls the environment. He takes care of that the environment is on the LED wall. And now I had the sign, and I even saw it, that you can just move the picture easily. So that's an advantage of the virtual production. If you prepare your environments like you think about of what you want to probably change, you can move trees, you can move mountains, you can change the weather, you can change the sun to night. So those are all the advantages. Some of you probably ask, so what about the good old green screen? Of course, green screen is still a way to do that. It's not like virtual production on LED is that thing to go now and forget about green screen. No, virtual production on LED is one of a mighty tool in your tool case you should have in your tool case. Compared to virtual production on LED, the green screen has got some disadvantages. Like, if you put on that green screen, Timo, could you put on that green stream for us? Green screen. If you have a look at the glasses, that whole glass is nearly green. So think about the post-production that has to undo that has to redo the lighting. Have a look on the black shirt of our gentleman. If you have got, there's everywhere that grain spiel. That has to be redone in virtual production. Or in post-production. While when you have got the original environment in the background, could you switch into the background? There's already that environment light. You have got the reflection in the glasses, like you can see everything in the back. You have got no grain spill on the faces, on the skin. So that's another advantage of the virtual production on LED. So what do we do that for? What can you do with that for? Virtual production on LED is a tool where you can create moving images. Moving images in terms of you're doing the movies, like special effects, you're going on areas where it's hard to get, for example, making it dramatic. If you want to have a shoot into a war zone, it's easier and it's a lot more safe to put that into a studio and shoot your war scene into a studio. You can have for commercials, for example, like funny commercials where bubbles are everywhere, where you can let people fly, for example, just to promote your product in a funny way or in a creative way. And you can do serious as well, like the typical driving scenes, what we see when people are sitting in the car. You have got the wall in the background, you have got the reflections. You pretend the people are driving in a car by night, by day. So that's all how you can use your virtual production or virtual production on LED for. There was a very, very flat overview of how virtual production on LED can work or does work and what you can use it for. I already mentioned Timo, my colleague. He's our media operator, and he will now tell you a little bit more detailed what it needs for virtual production on LED, what is the advantage in a more technical way, I'd say.
Thank you so much. So that was a little delay because opening the Unreal scene on my laptop took a little longer than running it on the render nodes, but these are the kind of challenges that you have as an operator. What is an operator and what do I operate? I operate media, I operate Unreal, I operate tracking, in short, virtual production. That's my title. I'm a virtual production operator doing everything around it. And if everything's well prepared, I'm a smooth operator. But that's the key point. Preparation is everything. We live by the code, fix it in pre. It really needs to be planned out in pre-production. What are we going to do? How complex is it going to be? And who needs to be involved in the steps? For me, there's like a couple of different layers of complexity. The easiest is just an image, right? We're on a skyscraper, we just want a small town and we want a little illusion as like a shot in between. That's very easy to put on, just put the image on the wall and that's it. Then we have 2D content, which for me means like video plates, typical driving scenes or a world outside of a window that with birds flying by and whatnot. That needs a bit of planning for what's going to be our perspective. How are we going to capture the scene to make it believable while having these limitations of like a proper video footage, 2D image. And then there's 3D, what you see in the background, where we have a proper 3D world. We can move around, we can track the camera, we can track multiple cameras and not necessarily record simultaneously. That's larger challenges. And And each of these steps takes more people, more preparation, more time ahead of the thing. The key thing is cooperation. To sell the illusion that we are doing here, you really need the set design. Ideally, replicate objects in the digital and the physical worlds. We need the DOP on board early on. There is a lot of flexibility, especially in the 3D worlds, but we should have a pretty good idea of what we want to end up in the end, because every bit of flexibility that we didn't prepare for, we can't necessarily deliver on site. So if we know what kind of content we're looking for, we can prepare it and add the flexibility that we actually do want without running all the way over cost. And also light, having the gaffer involved early on, because we do have light coming from the wall, but it's not necessarily the light that they have. And just getting everything right, getting the contrast right, is a big part of selling the whole illusion. Another very important thing is to check in real life ahead of time. For the more complex shoots with 3D, we typically say like 1 week before shooting, the most important creative people should come together and look at it on an actual wall, just to make sure that it works with the framing, everything is as everyone anticipated. The difference between a laptop screen or a monitor and looking at it in real life is huge. There is some time for creation that you need to budget for. So the 3D environments, the 2D driving plates or real worlds, that needs to be budgeted for. There isn't quite a rule of thumb because it always depends on the specificity and the amount of detail that you need. Is there like a very important monument in the background that you need at specifically the right time of day, then there's going to be more time that needs to be done to get the details right, to get everything looking right. If it's something that can be done with stock footage, obviously it's not as long a pre-production. And after we got everything fixed, we also need some time to make it run smoothly. Make sure the frame rate is good enough that everything looks, that the illusion works. Because we do have limitations, right? We need to make sure that the colors are right. We need to make sure that the foreground and the background aren't in totally separate worlds where one is cold and the other is in a warm light or something. Light specifically, the LED walls of this scale typically only have red, green, and blue light. So you don't want to use it to actually light your actors. It's going to flatten out the image quite a lot. We have a couple of artifacts that we have to worry about. I'm going to talk a bit more about them later. We have to worry about tracking, which needs to be set up, measured in, which we did the last couple of days. Yeah, in general, we're not the hero of the show. We're the background, we're selling the illusion. Ideally, we try to make the impossible possible. So space station, shooting 4 hours during a sunset, all that kind of stuff, which would be impractical to actually get on location in real life. If we can make that happen, that's great. That's what I'm looking for. Artifacts are like 3 important ones that I worry about. The moment we focus on the wall, we get a moiré effect. Just because the LED wall is a grid pattern, the camera sensor is a grid pattern, and we get a kind of chromatic aberration, mesh wall overlapping effect that we really want to avoid because it's hard to clean up. Our goal is to make the job of the color graders and post-production as easy as possible. We want to capture as much as we can in camera. That's why it's also often called in-camera VFX. We have especially in 3D, some lag. So the camera tracker recording where the camera is supposed to be, that being sent to our rendering machines. The rendering machines rendering an image and the image being sent to the wall to display takes a bit of time. So quick camera movements are possible, but need to be planned out ahead of time. So if you want a whip pan, we can give a lot more space on the side to make that happen, but that's a communication thing. That's a coordination thing again. If that was mapped out, planned out ahead of time, it's not a problem. If you come with that on day of shooting, it's going to be a lot harder to make that happen. And frame spikes, if frame rates don't align, we have a world behind us that's happening. The moment that's not running smoothly, if we're recording with 25 FPS, if we don't have 25 FPS consistently, we have the world jumping, which looks really jarring and breaks the illusion immediately. There really needs to be consideration for the tech to run, for everything to run smoothly. Not just to sell the illusion, but also to reduce frustration on day of shooting, right? We're here to get a lot of content in not a lot of time. If we're running behind because things are stuttering, if we have to retake the good takes over and over, no one really wants that. And last but not least, color is also a big thing. The walls are calibrated, but they are typically calibrated for the eye. They're calibrated for events. Cameras don't quite work like eyes. So if we want to control the color pipeline, it really needs to be controlled from beginning to end. So from the content needs to be properly set up, graded. We need enough data, enough depth in the big enough files, to say quickly. We need to make sure that everything here is set up right, and we need to calibrate the camera to the wall. It is possible to do it like in the more rough way where you go by eye, but that's going to make the job of the color grader afterwards a bit more challenging, and it's maybe necessary to separate the background from the foreground in a couple of shots to get the colors just right for the final image. I hope the tech didn't bore you too much, because now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Tommy, who's gonna give you a few more examples from the practical shooting on LED walls.
Gibst du mir gleich Filter? Hello everybody. Oh, it's quite loud. Thank you. Hello everybody, I'm Tommy. I had the pleasure to realize a few projects in front of the LED wall in the virtual production method, and I would like to show you a few examples. Feels a little bit like the warm-up band here for Mr. Johannes Mücke, who will show you later the large scale. Johannes, do you help me quickly, or maybe? Here we go. So I don't hold you too long, because Johannes will soon show you amazing large-scale production they did in Italy, also in front of the LED wall. I like to show you some smaller or more approachable projects we realized. Well, first of all, again, I mean, you've seen quite clearly the technical aspect on it, hybrid production method using real-time visualizations. We project digital environments on set on our LED walls. Well, besides the CGI method, there is also, we call it the 2.5D method that we are using, like real shot footage to project it on the wall, which has certain problems regarding the parallaxic perception and the integration of the game engines and camera tracking in real time. I jumped back a little bit in time, and this was about 4 or 5 years ago. That's how it kind of started, because one of the big advantages was always like tracking shots, like driving shots when cars are moving. And, oh, thank you. True. Way more beautiful. And this was, in a pre-state, a method where we used several LED monitors, so it was not a closed wall, to project the background while the car was driving. Here you might see like the monitors we used in the, so working like, oh, can I project? Yeah, here, like here are the monitors we used for this one. Then, this was one of the first promos we did for the HQ7. And as you can see already, as the environment is covered in a larger manner, so you can move around more freely, you have a way more leeway in working with reflections in the windshield, even though there are still some faults in it, like on these surfaces and stuff. So, well, things are always up to be improved. But here you can see a little bit what are the possibilities. Yeah, we're having. Making of, I think that was 1 year ago. Well, then we had been facing crowd shots. Oktoberfest, some of you might know, a lot of people in various shapes. Here we had a CGI animated background, the whole tent, we had crowd in the background, on the wall, and on set, well, there was just a rather small party. 16 extras, 6 tables. Another one is challenging locations, large, expensive locations, hard to get locations, availabilities, you name it. This was a commercial for Austrian supermarket brand. I think I might spare you the rest of you guys, but I wanted to show you that there was very little props involved. On the left side, oh, sorry, I have to go back. On the left side of the screen, you see there was one podest with a table on top. And that's about it. I think quickly to summarize it up, benefits, efficiency, reducing travel, faster setups, swapping locations within seconds. Immersions, people in front of the camera, they don't act in front of green, and they still get the vibe of the environment, get the setting, but I'm sure Johannes Mücke will show you way more about this in his presentation. Oh, flexibility. Flexibility, instant adjustments to scenes and lighting. I can shoot a sundowner as long as I want. No light running away. And of course, in terms of green production, sustainability, lower carbon footprint, and resources use. Little outlook, paradigm shift. Well, if you might call it like that, obviously there's still the good old school filming happening and will always happen, but there are some advantages in this one. I guess the future lies in creative and technical integration in our ideas and in our visions we are all having and we're achieving to realize. Thank you very much. I think now it's time for Johannes.
Let's have a huge round of applause for Tommy Dirnhofer, for Katja Köster, and Timo Müssig, and the entire wonderful team here at HQ7 and LEDcave. And they also said if you have questions, technical questions, any kind of questions, they're going to be later around and we can ask them anything we want. And it's so wonderful that there's so many people here. Can we maybe squeeze together so everybody can have a seat? Is it possible? Are we just too many? We have these wonderful hard cases. Is there any more butt space available? Or are we fully, I guess the people who came too late just might have to stand. No squeezing, some squeezing. Anybody who has some butt space left to him, raise their hand so that some people can sit down. Oh, yeah, please. Everybody who arrived a little later, please have a seat. And we're going to switch now. We're gonna travel back in time. We are in the year 79 AD in the Roman Empire. The Colosseum is about to be built. And I'm so excited to welcome here on stage someone who made this possible. It's Roland Emmerich's epic historical drama show, Those About to Die. And I just want to give you a little bit of a background of the person who's about to come on stage. His background is in architecture and gaming. He was actually also the art director here in Vienna of the branch of Rockstar Games. He was involved in games like Max Payne, Assassin's Creed, Warhammer 40k, and he's been working with Roland Emmerich for quite some time. He's been the key concept artist on Independence Day Resurgence, storyboard artist on his film Midway, key concept designer on Moonfall. He also worked as the production designer on Austria's first science fiction film Rubicon, for which he won the Austrian Film Academy Award. He's himself a writer and director, made short films like Reverie or also UI, Soon We Will All Be One, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. And it's a huge honor and pleasure to welcome now on stage, as he's being mic'd up. Take your time, no stress. I have a little personal story to share. It's an especial big honor because this guy was so kind to invite me and Hannes personally to come to Rome as they were shooting this show. To just take a look, to just get our own experience at the virtual production studio at the Cinecittàs. And not only that, he let us sleep at their super fancy house with Roland Emmerich, his partner, his chihuahua, and we got to spend the time together, drink wine, hang out at the pool, and it was a huge joy. And I'm so happy now to introduce, let's have a huge round of applause for Johannes Mücke.
All the details, the dirty ones.
Dirty details. Johannes,
Yeah.
I will chill next to you. But
Yes,
yeah, is it okay? You have to stand.
just like back in Rome. Right?
Yeah.
So when Hannes called me, I was very excited. So thank you very much, LEDcave and VEF. It was really hard to pronounce in English. Yeah, it feels like back in Rome. It's very exciting. It was in fact it was an absolutely stunning time, and we made a huge journey over the secrets and beauty, but also over the traps of virtual production in the volume stage there. And now, since we heard a lot from camera and from the guys behind, I'm gonna obviously have a look from the design side. From the production designer side, and just to put this out in front, it was awesome to work on the virtual production project over there, but it was very difficult and challenging though. So when I now tell you, okay, these were all the boundaries and all the difficulties and challenges we faced, it doesn't mean I don't love it to bits, but. I think it's a very interesting, different way of looking at it as well. I hope you will too. Just need to find it.
And I will be a little bothering you from time to time when I don't understand something. I will ask, and also the audience is welcome to ask any question, also in German if you prefer. But I'm so excited to hear more about your journey to Rome.
Yeah, it could happen that because it was 14 months that we were working in this, so that I'm a little bit of a specific idiot. I don't know how to translate Fachidiot. Bringing out some technical terms that might be explained a little further. So. We heard it before. Working on productions, on virtual production, is always it's a gigantic collaboration between camera, VFX, obviously the director, producers as well, and the art department. But since I'm only representing the art department here, I have a little clip of Roland and Pete Travers, the VFX supervisor, and DNAG, our partner who did all the virtual work, who had the 25 operators on stage, who also made the post. It's just 6 minutes, but I think it's worth having a look at it and to get in the mood of this show. Sound would be great. Do we have some sound? Should we try? Yeah. It's still a little quiet here.
While we wait for a moment, I could get to maybe just drop some specifics and technical details about the show. It is written, or it's based on the book by Daniel P. Mannix, and the show is created by Robert Rodat and directed by Roland Emmerich, as well as Marco Kreuzpaintner. And you have an enormously amazing cast. Obviously, Anthony Hopkins as Emperor Vespasian, and also some wonderful international actors, and also the great David Vurava, who I believe is here today.
Yeah, he told me he was going to come. There he is.
He plays Gavros, the experienced horse trainer and former charioteer. Let's have a huge round of applause for David Vurava.
David, I found a scene with you on virtual production stage, so you will be the guinea pig for us on the graveyard. That specific set. So the way it happened was Harald Klose, the Austrian producer that some of you might know, he tumbled over Daniel P. Mannix, Those About to Die, and he was actually just thinking, wow, this book inspired Ridley Scott to do Gladiator, and it also, inspired many other period dramas of this time. And he thought, yeah, I'm going to produce that one, and Roland might do the pilot. And he showed it to Roland. He was like, dude, no, I can't only make the pilot. I want to co-produce. He was so excited about it. And he still is burning for Those About to Die. So the second season is still kind of in the air, and we all hope that it's going to happen. Should we try again?
Can you do maybe the sounds with your mouth, Johannes? Wow, this was surprisingly amazing. Right? I think I prefer it like this.
Yeah, but the guys are talking there. Can we do something about that, or should we just skip it? It's a pity.
But as we are still trying, I
could go ahead and we then just, if the sound works, we circle back to the clip.
Okay.
So I'll continue with the production facts because, before we get into the rest, really quickly, we shot in September 2022. We started production, and we shot until December 2023. It was 14 beautiful months in Rome. I really have to say that. The Cinecittà was amazing where we shot. There were 10 episodes that we had to shoot, 5 of which did Roland, 5 of which Marco Kreuzpaintner did. Altogether, it was a total of 500 minutes of screen time and 155 shooting days with 65 virtual production shooting days on the sounds, on the volume stage. And my construction budget was 15 million without labor and set deck and props. And we were really lucky enough that it worked out to Cinecittà. We were running a little bit in competition with Ridley Scott for Gladiator 2, who was actually planning to shoot there as well. But we won because we were first. And it was initially the big question: were we going to go to Serbia? That was the front runner for the longest time. But Rome also offered back then. It's not that big anymore, but back then 30% tax rebate. We had this, and you see the picture of this. We had the backlot at the studios, which had still a gigantic part of Rome: temples, the slums, and other buildings from the show Rome. From the TV show Rome, that was shot in 2009. I don't have to talk about how incredible the industry and the crews were over there, so that was really quite a treat. Cinecittà Studios, they're expanding now, but they had 16 sound stages. to that time. And they had additionally an amusement park, kind of 45 minutes outside Rome, which had another 2 huge stages. And more importantly, it had a racetrack still. I mean, it was pretty much just sand with a cover around, but they shot Ben-Hur 2016 there, and Circus Maximus, that was the core of the show, so that helped us a lot that we had the infrastructure there already. It had the best pasta in the world, which turned out to be a big problem for everybody when it comes to scales. And most importantly, a brand new virtual production stage. There were just a couple of demos being shot there, but no bigger show had ever touched it. And if I ever refer to stage 18, that means automatically that's the code for virtual production stage. So that might happen, we all called it stage 18. It's like a Harry Potter train card, isn't it? Didn't I? There was 9.5. So yeah, that's something different.
But didn't you also say stage 18 is the historical Cinecittà studio?
No. Stage 18 was the latest stage that was built to the time. Stage 5, Teatro Cinque. That was the big one, the big historical one of Dante Ferretti, where we built the Colosseum. So that was the white whale. So we've talked a lot about the advantages of virtual production, but for us specifically, the advantages were, firstly, we had, for 10 episodes, 500 minutes of screen time, we had gigantic amounts of sets, which we couldn't all build physically, but also many locations, and it came down to numbers when we thought, will we go to Northern Africa, will we shoot in Morocco, will we go to Syria, will we also go, I mean, do we do all this, have the whole production travel around, or shoot it on stage 18? There was a big argument. Then obviously people came and asked me, oh, of course you shoot in Rome, they have the Colosseum, right? I was like, yeah. It looked a little different though, 2,000 years ago, right? So there are no locations, obviously, from 79 AD. We talked a lot about the consistent and controllable light, which is great. But also the fact that Roland is such a big VFX fan, it meant he constantly scratches on the line of how many shots he can do. Because most of you will know that, the calculation of a VFX company is a shot count. The big thing is if you have the CG right behind you, and it is there, and on a volume stage, you can shoot as many shots as you want. It's the same money. Then for me, and also for Roland, it was very important that in the very early phase of the world-building process, to get our world of 79 AD together with VFX, it was important to us to make this world coherent. So that in this gigantic pre-production that VFX have, and the art department, and myself, we could really get this coherent world. So this big shift from post to pre was very interesting for everybody. And also we had DNAC, who were just developing some virtual production stages themselves. In Heathrow, they had a big interest in coming to Rome and kind of learning the ropes, testing their things, and building up know-how. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to describe a little learning curve on the first set, how we started to learn quite painfully, then what lessons we learned, and in the very end, I'll crown a winner of all of our sets that I think was the most successful way how to deal as a production designer and also as a camera man, well, the whole camera crew, with the volume stage. But before that, I want to illustrate that quickly, because there is this sweet spot that we all know. The art department does the physical sets, obviously, and the camera has to turn it into 2D images. And that sounds much easier than it is, but there's this sweet spot where you communicate and where you find, okay, this is what camera's vision is, and this is what production designer's vision is, and how they go together. Where do you need the camera to go? What lenses do you have? What's the light concept, and how can the surfaces of the set react to that? Where do you need flying walls? All these things. When they meet and have this overlap, you get this sweet spot that we all know. But as soon as we have the VFX already in production, the sweet spot gets much sweeter, but also much smaller that you have to hit. And this is kind of this little area that I'm showing there, this little sweet spot between the three departments, is what we've always been striving for. One example of how art and VFX worked in the collaboration was we had a lot of scenes in the Ludus Magnus, which was the gladiatorial school in Rome, which was right next to the Colosseum. There were different stages of how it looked, and we were trying to figure it out. How could this be a set? And then Pete Travers made the lucky shot. There was a German company who had a full-built Unreal Engine model of Rome in 3 levels of detail. In fact, in some of the parts, you could go in with a camera, and the level of detail would always rise until you saw papers on the street and little stones and cobbles and stuff. Unfortunately, just in a few corners, not in all the corners that we needed.
May I ask you, how come this German company had that lying around?
Well, they had made a Rome model for a museum, just for an interactive museum, and they figured we can make more money with that. Yeah. So with that, they were actually hiring it out, and I seem to remember, but don't quote me on that, but it was $100,000 to get the full rights of this model for the show, and that was really a lucky shot. I mean, imagine building that. That would have been tricky. Anyways, so when we got this model and we saw, oh look, this is the Ludus Magnus, the one that I'm pointing out in yellow over there, and it solved all our problems. It was like, look at that. So there's the round arena in the middle that has virtual production stage written all over it. So we just need to build a little piece of studio build for where the gladiators are kind of accommodated, build a connecting alley that both sets have, and we're done, and we're great, and we have everything in CG around it. So essentially, the model was driving our design. A bit of concept art looking down the alley towards the virtual production stage, and the other way around towards the set that was in the background. And we started going. So this is a little set that we built on the backlot. It didn't need more than that. Then you can see the look towards this set in this little alley that we built over there. And then we disassembled the whole alley. We had obviously planned it in pieces, brought it onto stage 18, and we were ready to go. So there's another clip. Are you still working on the sound, or we have given up, right?
No, we have not given up. We are trying, and if you are ready, we could try again.
I'm ready exactly with this clip.
Then I would say let's give it a shot.
All right.
And see if we can get some sound going.
So we're seeing now, I let it run first. This is kind of everybody ramping up for the shot. You see Roland in blue. This is the final set as we had it on stage 18. And let's see what happens.
There's no output.
Still no sound.
You know.
It's not so important here.
Well, but the problem is very transparent. We have a couple of clips, and it would be a bummer if we cannot get this to work.
Would be.
So if you don't mind, Johannes, and if you guys don't mind, let it run, and we will try our best in the background to make this work, because right here we have the output going. Everything should be correct here on the laptop.
So in the meantime, let me show you. You see some interesting elements here that work together. Oops, sorry. The more mistakes, the better the presentation. I can't scroll. Okay, so that's another learning curve here. I'm making just now.
We are learning in real time here.
Wow. All right. So yeah, firstly, it's really hard. I find it really hard to distinguish where the real set ends and the virtual set starts. I mean, in this image, you get the idea, kind of. The wooden barrier around it marks the spot. But once we move back with the camera, with my little iPhone there, I mean, you can already see the camera is retracting, and the same thing that we had here. The whole perspective changes because we actually had exactly the same system. Then we had this LED sky up there, which left us very little space for camera lighting. You see it up there. Then we had this virtual sky with which we could always color correct the set, make areas darker or a little bit brighter. And this will become a little more important later in this presentation. Yeah, I can cut it short here. You don't hear the pearls of wisdom of Roland right now, unfortunately. Yeah. And that's the final image. That's pretty much the image that we got. You can see, obviously, that the lighting always had to come sidewise, because we only had the space for direct sunlight at the sides of the stage. That meant the CG architecture was always side lit as well. And that will later come to this a little bit more in detail, but this little fence is not only to protect the gladiators, but also to protect the camera for this horrible little edge there, where the physical set meets the virtual set. But we found a couple of solutions to meet that. So this way was the other way around, whereas in the previous example, the art department took what we got from the CG world and built the Ludus Magnus out of this. In this case, we designed the treasury, which nobody, in fact, we did a lot of research, nobody knows how it looks like. It was only in the Apollo temple, is what we read. So we invented it, we designed it. The set ends where these two boxes over there are. But then we had to be very quick with the design. We always design in 3D, and this went right to VFX, and they created the Unreal model, which is a different kind of virtual model that we would have for the stage. And this is what was so satisfying for the production designer. You don't get the VFX, and you have to live with it in post, which is most of the time the case, but you actually design that. You design the whole world, and that was quite a great experience. The next challenge was that building sets like this, it's always about the view, what you will see from your set. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the volume stage. So you have to think a little differently. You don't think in the space that's physically built, but you always think in all kinds of views. How do you composition that? How does your set react of whatever will be on the other side? So it's a whole lot of vista point design, but you're also designing what you see out there as a production designer. And for me, having worked in games, that was extremely exciting and very, very satisfying. But you have to know this is definitely one of the challenges you have to do. So yeah, with this set, there was the Imperial Gardens, for example. If you looked in this direction, we had this rotatable stage at Cinecittà. Oh, by the way, I haven't said the facts yet. So the stage over there was a little bigger than this. It was 24 meters in diameter. Had this big circle that you could rotate, which is kind of important if you have bigger sets, because you need the view of the reverse angles of your sets. And we had 8 meter height of this half circle of the production stage. So if it was rotated in 0 degree, this set, you would see towards what's in the back, which is the palace. And if it was rotated 180 degrees into the other direction, we'd have this gigantic view over Rome. And there we sat, Roland, myself and Pete Travers, and we sat and sat and sat so long, because we've mentioned that before, that the turnaround times of this little set, yes, they're 2 minutes or less. It's not the set, it's not the fact when you have really big sets, obviously. When you sculpt really big nature, when you have a rostrum built up, when you have architecture on that, then you obviously have real set striking elements, which we had a lot. And there are so many concerns with that, that every assistant director has always a 3-dimensional puzzle to get the shooting schedule right. But with elements like, okay, here, for example, on the very right, we had built a rostrum. I'll show a little bit later, a 1 meter high rostrum. That took us alone 2 days to assemble and disassemble this. So whenever we had a set with a rostrum, they had to be in consecutive order. Same thing, the next column was also in shooting schedule. Okay, let's build a hill, because we have a couple of sets with hills. Let's shoot them all in order and very close to each other. Then architecture, little sets with elements, and then the rest is all sand, because you would see in a later clip, getting the sand on the stage was not that easy. You can't get with a crane on that, so some poor Roman guys were running around with wheelbarrows and were trying to sand up the Colosseum. It was actually the most important virtual production set that we had. So that's why learning curve is the chapter. And the core of the show was from the beginning, I mean, amongst other paradigms that Roland was following, like the grandness, the low light, the idea of racing, this Formula One event in Old Road, or this Super Bowl event that was gigantic commercially, costs a third. It actually cost a third of the Roman budget, all the games and the racing, back in these days. That's what he wanted to show, but not only the grandness and the breathtakingness of it, but also these intimate moments where drivers are kind of killing each other on this field. They're living out their rivalries, all this. So this had to work, and we weren't ready. So we thought we were ready when we started designing the Colosseum, and that's a fun part too. It's almost like designing a spaceship, because it could look in any way, because it shifted shape so often. So we had a little freedom there to design this. You see the spina, which is important, the middle part where the horses run around, and the Imperial Lodge balcony on the other side there. And then obviously to always have the connection, and it is where it was located as well, the Palatine Hill with the Imperial Castle on top of it. So this is the set that we built. As you can see, it's just up until the uppest awning over there. This is the set that we built on this sandy racetrack that we had, and these walls down there below the Emperor's balcony, those will come a little bit important, because we were going to rebuild those on the stage as well. This gate obviously had a lot of steel and construction behind it, but the gate on the very bottom there of the sand, there was a core set element that David remembers quite well, because most of his scenes, a big part of his scenes were there as well. It led to the underbelly of the Colosseum, and yeah. The spina was designed quite properly, and as you can see, everything that would back the horse, the chariots, we had to build physically. The rest would have been set extended. And this is kind of an overview of the set that we had there. Back over there are the starting gates, and this is where the charioteer moments had there, like this tense moments before the race would start. And then obviously when they were parading in front of the Emperor Imperial box, but it's actually the next shot after the next picture I took after this was that. Luckily nobody was injured. But it also showed us, or proved, that what we knew already, we can't have actors obviously riding on the stage, on this sand track. So in order to get these big images there of the sand flying around and these wild horses, we had trained stuntmen doing the far shots with the horses and the close-ups on the hooves. Because if you see those guys racing around quadrigas, it's pretty impressive, especially when there are 4 of them at the same time. So we did the same trick like we did with the Ludus Magnus. This is the setup on stage 18 again. We had this big sand pit in front. Pete Travers and Dean Egg had built the Colosseum as detailed and possible as the engine could take it. And on the other side, on the reverse angle of the stage, on the front side, we had built this part of the this part below the Imperial balcony, where we had the big door, the viewing gates with little slots where the actors could always follow what was happening outside. And most importantly, and that's one of the big and important things, if you ever have the chance to get the physical set close to the virtual production stage, this is where it can really break the magic. So behind this door was a big physical set, a lot of tragic moments, a lot of tears and blood were shed in there in front of camera. And in front of the door was the other part. So there's another little clip. This is where Pete is showing Roland how it works. What he did is he had the Unreal model completely built in 3D of the whole Colosseum. But as opposed to, as we just saw here, that it's camera tracked, he pre-rendered it, which means he was introducing a camera that goes looking backwards around the spina all the time. So we had our back projection for the charioteers. And then he had animated all the quadrigas, all the wild horses. They were all CG generated and they were racing towards us.
Don't have.
That felt like this in a way, if you stood there.
I'm not sure yet if it works for you.
It's pretty scary when 8-meter tall horses come towards you.
You rotate back to normal.
And there you see our set, how it was rebuilt in CG. There was a lot of photogrammetry obviously involved, that when we had sets, we would 3D scan them. And then on the other side, once the sand was in, we would have our connective tissue to the other set. And so it looked. Down there, you could see at this control monitor how it looked in camera. But this was really a time travel back to the 50s, how back projection car chases were made. This was what we did.
And win, smile, and go!
It's that easy sometimes, or at least we thought. So now we had three things. We had the splinter unit footage that we shot on the racetrack. We had some close-ups of our sets, with the Emperor and how the audience would react on the rafters. We had the full CG images, and then we had, the horses on the fake horses on stage 18. I personally think it went really well. I mean, everybody I talked to was really excited. There were breathtaking moments, and the goal was achieved. However, I don't think it was the best use of virtual production, personally, because there were a couple of things that we learned out of this. And I just want to go through this really quickly. So obviously, the first thing is sunlight. We all know how hard it is to shoot, to kind of recreate sunlight in the stage. It's virtually impossible. But we see here, Tenax is walking on an outside location set, and then he's walking on sunlight on stage 18. And given that is all set photography, but it's still, we all know sunlight is full of challenges. But the virtual production has the big challenge there that if you blare in daylight sun, you will weaken out the LED wall behind. So the first thing we learned is whatever we do, even if it's daylight, we have to avoid direct sunlight and blaring into the stage. The next thing that we were obviously very aware, we were working with Unreal, and Unreal is a real-time engine. That means you cannot compare this real-time VFX with VFX that we are used to see. So as an example, this is post-production VFX. This is pre-rendered, where there was a whole VFX company sitting forever in detailing this and then having all times and computing power to render out these images. You don't have that in a 3D in a 3D games engine. It is just by nature there is a certain limit until that you can push it in terms of how many people are in there, how many details, how many effects like water, smoke. So you can obviously always put that in post. There's nothing to stop you from that. But just as a comparison, this is how the Rome model looked. I mean, that's not the most flattering shot here, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. Of course, we had vegetation and a lot of detail, but it is a difference between pre-rendered and real time. So that's when you create two sides of a coin in a way, right? You have this very high detailed splashing sand and every little rock detail, and then stage 18 where you had to always kind of make sure you don't get too sharp and too focused, but have a more shallow depth of field. The next challenge was live. Obviously, we had really cool LiDAR scan technology where we had people in their movement scans. So we had them cheering or being very sad, animation cycles of the people back on the rafters. But it's only so many people you can bring in, or you make concessions, less movement, less. So that was bringing life to the sets, especially if it's gigantic, is quite challenging. This was our concept art for riots in Rome. And we planned the riots, and they work quite well if you are very close to the actors and you have just a little bit of background from the virtual production. But as soon as these guys run towards the palace gates over here, and you don't see enough of this life in the background, it becomes a challenge that you have to solve in post later. And this is something I want to talk a little bit more in detail about, because this is, you can see there, our Circus Maximus. There's the edge. We have filled up the stage with the sand where the action was. But especially when you're in nature, but also in all kinds of other sets, if you have the direct hit of the wall behind and your set, then obviously you get a seam, right? That you have to stitch in post production later. But it's also about matching the color, matching the textures. So another thing we learned from this set of the chariots is we have to trick the edge. We cannot show the edge. And with Roland predominantly wanting to shoot on wide lenses, was a bit challenges though. You couldn't always be just on like an American frame. So one way to treat the edge was getting this shallow depth of field. There, we actually had a backplate that we shot in Morocco over there. And we used another small trick which wouldn't have worked in the Colosseum, in the Circus Maximus. It's just building little sand dunes, making those organic. So that was the first way of tricking the edge. Another way is always all kinds of special effects and practical effects. But then again, you can see this already here, how we were always trying to be careful with a very delicate wall. The more smoke we blew in, the darker the wall got, because obviously the smoke particles would settle on the LED screens. We had to come up with different tricks about the edge.
And thank you so much for being so honest about also, being critical to your own work.
Yeah, but I think it's also the thing. I really honestly say, like working with virtual production and the volume stage is absolutely fascinating. It solves so many problems, and it's very exciting because it opens so many opportunities as well. Things that you didn't think of. But you cannot say all this like in a commercial clip without saying, but it comes with a price. Otherwise, everybody would do that. And the price is not necessarily monetarily, because I think the budgets really make sense against each other in certain cases. But the price is that you have to make concessions somewhere else. And you have to be aware of that, I think.
And may I ask you, because you mentioned the level of details when you go through these game engines, through Unreal, there's a maximum. And now your production is, I think, 2 years ago. And is this something that you see dramatically changing within a few years, that just the power of the computing power can increase?
It would be logical, right? I don't know the numbers or the capacities. I think these there you are. I think you would know better about that, but I would assume that, I mean, the technology catches up with the requirements. But it will always be this way. I mean, if you're in a real-time engine, it will never look like pre-rendered. That's just a fact. And if you know that, it's great. Then you have to deal with that. Then you have to say, okay, so this is what I get from this, and this is what I get from that. I mean, just as much as the game engines develop, obviously technology for pre-rendered images in post will develop and be faster and better.
And I want to take the opportunity just check with you guys if everyone is still on board, if we lost you somewhere, if you have questions, technical questions.
We're not even half through.
Yeah. Because Johannes says a lot more. Oh.
Maybe just a few sentences. So for 25 FPS, we have 40 milliseconds to render the image. This is not a lot. There's some contexts that work better, like interior, anything man-made is much easier than organics, right? Water is terrible because it's just so fluid. There's so much happening with light. It's really difficult to capture the reality there. And also like intricate, flowery growths that happen on walls or something. It's difficult to get that 100% believable. It can still be usable, especially for like commercials or something like that, where you already have like a kind of artificial feel. But those are really the most challenging things.
But I liked a lot what you said earlier, that you said it just requires a lot of pre-production, a lot of planning, and that means conversations with the providers, with the guys behind the LED wall, as you called yourself, and the operators, to understand, okay, what are the limitations and what are the opportunities to really clear that out. And in a lot of cases, and those about to die, we said, oh, we can't do that. All right, but can we do that? Oh yeah, that's no problem. All right, let's do that then. You know, I think it's a dialogue, a long dialogue and a productive dialogue. If that happens beforehand, then you have a great chance to be very successful.
And there's a lot to learn for all the departments, right? The real magic happens when people work together and start to really use what's available.
Right.
Thank you. So now I'm curious, how did you end up getting smarter? I know you started picking...
Well, we got a little smarter on the next set.
A little. And I have to add, you also got a little smarter in the sense that you picked up Italian as you were working there. I was so impressed when I visited you that you were just conversing with your team in Italian, which is very impressive. So you were definitely applying something there.
I'm prone to getting smarter. Maybe, yeah. I forgot it all though again.
Oh no,
yeah.
You didn't practice anymore?
Goes quickly. So the next set that we liked and that felt really quite successful was the Cispian roof. The story is there is a golden treasure hidden on this roof by the bad guy and the good guy. Well, I'm spoiling a little bit, but it's just a little bit now. The good guy finds it over there. And this roof, it is actually, you know, it is a bit of a pivotal thing up there because he also understands that a very important person that's close to his heart just died. So we shot this again, not only on virtual production stage, but in the backlot. These were the suburbs over there, the slums. And the rooftop, which had to have a great vista, we rebuilt on stage 18 again. See how often I say stage 18, but you know what I mean. So this was this little piece. You see this, it's dressed with all the crucial set elements. And because a couple of things went well. And one of them was the rostrum that I mentioned before. So we lifted the set up. I mean, essentially like we had here, which I'm sure you didn't by accident, but also by experience. But lifting things up towards the screen helps a lot. You also get a little light from below as much as you need, and you get rid of the edge. And we were so afraid of the edge that we made a really big wall around the roof as well, just to make certain this is not going to happen to us again. And the next thing was distance. So we've learned, all right, this is a huge Rome model, but if you're too close, you're going to get in trouble with credibility, with a suspension of disbelief. So you have to push whatever you have. This is actually Leptis Magna, North Africa, that we talked about with the hill. Where, as you can see, we pushed it away. We started Rome pushing away. It's fine. We're going to feel it in the background, but it shouldn't be too close. So that helped. But distance also in a different sense. Because before at the Circus Maximus, we had a distance in the nature of shots. You know, we were very close on the horses, and we were close on the horses on the rear track, but very close on the actors on the rear track as well. So there was a strong comparison. You were able to really match those against each other with the eye, and that obviously spoils the trick. In this case, we have two completely different situations. His POV down there in the alley, and himself on the roof. And this also helped combining it really well. So those were the lessons learned. Then another huge lesson that we learned that was so valuable was, this was a camera test, and I was filming the camera test because we had some footage to be tested that we had shot in Morocco. And then I saw, what the hell is happening down there on the stage floor? I mean, it's really, the whole thing feels like it's a viewing platform in the desert, and it's because the set is integrated with this light that everybody talks about, but this is how it goes. So I went with this clip to Roland and said, we have to like water everything down as much as we can, or polish, or whatever's glossy, bring it into the set, because it invites the light, and that has such a strong effect on merging the two worlds, that we started milking this cow wherever we went. It was always, I mean, it's a tricky thing to be in a LED stage with water, so we had to be a little careful, but the effect was really worth it. And we started a little over there. We had this, again, we had a little water spill from this water tank there, and it worked. It really worked well. You see it down there again. And the next thing that also went well, we had side light. We didn't have top light. It was hazy. So it was time of day. It was written in the script as middle of day. But we made concessions there because we knew we were going to be in big trouble if we had the straight sunlight back on the stage again. Yeah.
I find it so fascinating when you talk about light and haziness, and how I think also you said the fog, those are all the elements that actually keep the LED wall from working the way it should. And so, if I understood correctly, not the bright direct light, but the top light is the solution from your lessons learned.
The other way around. You don't want to try to imitate the sun shining down on you and being as strong as it is, because you have this problem of the LEDs fading towards the strong light that you need. But what you want to get it in from the side. The ceiling that we had up there was merely light correction, a little bit of color ambience that we would bring in there. The key light source would always be from the LED wall, unless we would pump in some effect lights from the sides. And a lot of the lighting would happen from this end, obviously. Like all the diffusers, all the indirect lights were always coming from stage direction. But I have a very good case study after that, like our winner, where I think the whole concept made the most sense.
And again, I just also want to invite you guys, if you have, we're going to do a longer Q&A afterwards, but if you have already some questions, if something is unclear, if you could just call out the question, I'm going to repeat it in the microphone for the live stream.
Yeah. To get a close-up of him looking down, right? No, that is right.
Johannes, just before you respond, I'm just going to repeat it for the live stream, because there are some people watching.
So the question was, it would have been great if we could have had if I understood you right, if we could have had a low angle of a close-up of him looking down to motivate his POV, right? In a way.
Is there a solution to do it in the LEDcave?
The quick answer, no. Because the resolution of the ceiling doesn't hold the pixel resolution that you need. It's for lighting there, and then you have the edge problem again. So I guess the only solution of an up angle would have been that you would have shot it right there outside against the sky. But then we're entering the whole proximity problem again, right? You have the in-stage, the on-stage light, and then the real daylight on that thing. So yeah, that's well pointed out. That would have been a concession. That was a concession Roland made. Yeah.
So this is one limitation that I guess you have to be creative.
Up angle is a problem just as much as these fucking white lenses that we had to use all the time. Because you can imagine, I mean, we were always above and Roland was jumping in circles. No, it's too small, 8 meters too small. Can we make it bigger? And no, it's physics, it's gonna collapse. Like the whole thing is set up to be maximum 8 meters. I said, next stage is gonna be 12 meters, and it's also gonna be too small. It's just one point that at one point you have the edge there. It is, as we saw earlier, it is a window. And we were actually fantasizing about building a LED dome. That would probably solve a lot. And then, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should change industry.
Sounds pricey. Are there any more questions for now, for what we've heard so far? Any understanding questions? Otherwise, Johannes, I'm very, very curious to hear more about your lessons learned.
So the next set that worked even better, I think, because we implemented. I mean, we implemented some of those lessons, and I think it shows. Is a lesson that I talked about earlier with one of a scene with David Wurwa again. So apart from all the things that we had learned before, we tried a couple of new things. Like really magic hour, dim light just works simply much better. Everything becomes much easier to integrate if you don't have this really glaring light and stuff. We built a 3-dimensional set, as you can see. So we had a larger rostrum. We had walls there. We had the hills going up. We had people walking upstairs to come onto that set, and then digging a grave inside, which was really helpful for the immersion, because how would you dig inside a studio space, right? Then we had some multi-layering, which I want to explain a little bit more. And with this, we had a lot more compositional control over our whole set. So in order to get this multi-layering, or let's start with the integration. Yeah, the multi-layering. What we did is we came very early with the designs, with the finished assets of all the gravestones and the columns that we had. And this was mentioned before by you guys. VFX came, photo scanned everything, and replicated the physical things in the background. It sounds so but it really does a big trick. So I want to call this virtual set deck. And we did this a lot. Like, for example, here's a different set. That's a Judean slave camp. The poor Judean slaves were those who built the Colosseum and then were fed to the lions. And it was a gigantic tent camp in front of the Colosseum, where we had a couple of scenes. And it worked really well. I was really happy when I saw that. We had some distance haze to the further layers, and tents after tents after tents, because we also had a chase in this set. But if you look at it, it was really overseeable, right? So another proof to say these tents that you see in the background over there on the LED wall, those were all photo scans and LiDAR scans of our set deck. Again, that means planning. The set decoration and the assets that you have to be way in advance finished for these guys to scan it and to implement it. And that feeds into the argument of, okay, it's all about planning, but it works. It really helps a lot. We also did a lot of virtual set deck here at Leptis Magna. It's essentially a desert with cages. The cages helped us a lot, again, in this case, to trick the edge over there, but also to make it kind of infinitely wide, this set. So I have another making of clip of how we shot in there. The giraffe's name was Rocco. He was incredible. He was...
Okay, watching the lion, Boca de Leone, and action.
And in this case, we had so much distance, which we also learned that the whole camera tracking wasn't that important anymore, because the further the distance, the less important it is that you have this distortion.
You mean the distance between the camera and the wall, or the camera?
Exactly, the wall would always adjust to the camera to keep the perspective right. But if you have such a distance to the background, this little virtual distance is so irrelevant that you can spare the camera tracking and thus gain more capacity for assets and for details and for stuff. Because camera tracking as well costs performance. And that was another cool deal we could make over there. And it's a shame you don't see, we had crocodiles, we had emus, and the giraffe actually came with comfort llamas. I hadn't ordered llamas, and there was the giraffe and 3 llamas. I was like, nice, so we get some llamas. No, they have to go before shooting. They're just comfort llamas for the giraffe. It was fantastic. Rocco was awesome. Then, at one point in the Colosseum, we had an elephant, and somebody didn't watch the elephant gates, which are elephant gates, and the elephant apparently knew that, so the giraffe and the elephant ran out of the stage and all over Cinecittà with people. Rocco was wild. She was an adventurer. And this is how it looked in the final image. And if you know it, sure, you can get an idea that there's an edge over there, but I mean, at this point, little dressing around, it didn't matter.
Could you show us, just for curiosity, where the edge exactly is, where the beginning of the screen is?
Right here. Right there.
And that was something that was, I think, blew me away the most when you were so kind to invite me to the Cinecittà Studios, is that I always thought of like virtual production as like this big screen that you do stuff in front of, but how much you actually build in front of it, and that it felt like the screen sometimes is even the smaller part because the actual build set is so much bigger and so impressive.
That's actually something that comes as the big solution later, as how to frame. Yeah, it might be the next one right here. It was also on the graveyard I liked these columns in the back because I thought it'd be great if we had something in front of the camera, if we were in reverse angle, so to get a little bit more depth. But they did something very different as well. And I want to call it repoussoir from Caspar David Friedrich. We all know the trick. Put something in the foreground of the big world and it becomes deep, it gets depth. So the columns worked so well in the set by dividing up the screen with large elements that we started using this all over. Then we said, okay, lesson learned, that's great. We have to cut with physical elements into the set, almost starting to frame it. I'll come to that a little later. That's the big funeral scene of Vespasian. And then we went even further and said, no, you know what? Maybe it's even better if you do gates, because it's framing even more. And that really did such a huge trick. We have some real footage behind there, and all we had to do for this scene was build this gate, then have some grass behind. And as a matter of fact, I was surprised. I didn't expect that foliage works really well, because you don't have geometry that would give it away too much. And especially if you have backplates that you shot on location somewhere, this foliage trick really worked well. And there you see the master himself being happy with the shot, I hope. You never know. And that one worked quite well, this kind of repoussoir. And from that on, we talked to our concept artists, and I said, guys, let's gates. We want gates. So when it came to the treasury that I showed before, the central part of the stage was a gate, and it would really help us. We had the interior looking out of the gate, we had the exterior looking into that. I mean, here we are at the interior shot. That's kind of, yeah. And then the 180-degree angle, we would look into the LEDcave behind. And I don't have a clip for this one now, but I can assure you this trick worked really magically.
And what was also so phenomenal, what I saw when I was there, was that you had this rotating stage, so you could easily just change that perspective very quickly, which was phenomenal.
So if you're planning with sets that are static on a stage, always think about the reverse angle. If the stage is not rotatable, you are in trouble. You have to redress, like the gate would have to be redressed. Oh, you lost me there, I think. Was that me? Am I back? Oh, yeah.
I think you're back.
Okay. You would have to redress, but if you don't have much to carry around, like this piece, which is most of the time the most clever sets, then you obviously don't need a rotatable stage. So again, you see the shiny floor, which invited the whole set in again, and it was really fun. Like the more sets we did, the more we learned, and it was like we were becoming kind of the A-team. I was Murdoch. But it felt like with this learning curve and these sets, we understood the tool, and it from being intimidated by it or overshooting what we were trying to achieve, it started to be a lot of fun actually. So then we subdivided the gates, even in more subdivisions. I mean, there's a point where you should stop, but this still worked quite well. And as you can see, as soon as you frame it, we had all the CG, all of a sudden made sense. You bought into that, so that was great. And then, you know, this is the run to the palace gates. And you see, we made big effort to frame the scale, again, with vertical elements as much as we could. Had a wall behind to cut out the distance. And then the gate again, with this trick, with a sudden light change that suggests a three-dimensional room. And it made sense. So this is the chimera that it ended up with. Those were 5 gates on top of each other. We were just, because the revamp times were so short and quick, it looked horrible in set photography at one point, but it worked in camera. And then this is the last one to the lessons learned, but the most important one is the rostrum. I talked about this a lot, so I'm going to be quickly, but this was our idea. This was our 24 diameter rotatable stage. And putting all set next to each other, we came up with a modular solution of how could we create modules that would cater to all the sets we were planning to do. They had reels that we would be quick enough to build whatever kinds of configurations that we could use. The rostrum, this red part down there, could also be a set of stairs. We could always add to that. And this is how it looked in the stage. It's still, we always calculated with 2 days of getting it in place, even though it doesn't seem too much. That was the reason why all the rostrum scenes were stacked next to each other. But it worked. Then we came up with, we called it forum floor. It was just latex panels. And if somebody on this planet knows how to make ancient stone, it's the Italians. It was really amazing. But they made these latex stones that we could always, in all kinds of positions, in a very clever system actually, put into patterns that worked. Be it, for example, what we talked earlier about, the Imperial Gardens. You see the rostrum was almost fully filling up the stage. Or, as I said before, the funeral, for example, which also gave us the opportunity that if we had this rostrum and then built another rostrum on top of that, we would really get a 3-dimensional stage, and it was planned to be almost theatrical, this stage to be, because it was such a big opera theatrical moment, that we used the whole rest of the stage to fill up with extras that we then could kind of go over the extras' head and see beautifully elevated the big stage where Vespasian goes and becomes a god. So learning from the rostrums, we said, okay, everything that we do in nature, we also lift up now. We're gonna create hills if we don't have a rostrum. So the campaign tent that was part of the Ostia harbor became a campaign tent on a hill. Then Kala, our African soon-to-be slave, who was looking for a son at Leptis Magna, would obviously come over a hill. And yeah, this is. I just brought this picture back in to show you the realization how we did that. Roland seems happy walking away, or is it begruntled? Via Appia, as everybody who's visited Rome, is entirely flat, but a hill just makes more sense. You would reveal Rome behind it, and you would use the stage perfectly. And in order to cut off the stage with our repoussoirs, we put some poor souls and crosses over there, just to give it the depth. It was also a story beat, to be honest, but it sounds better. And it was always the same hill. We just kept redressing, latex stones over there of the Via Appia, different look. On top of that, grass, reorganizing the stones. And then that was actually the most successful of the hill sets. That was the lion hunt. for which we had a background then shot in Morocco. So the last one before we come to the winner is, I want to call it pixel threshold. It was mentioned before, and it hit us like a brick because we weren't, or I at least wasn't really aware of this, that if you get too close to with the wrong lens, too close to the pixel wall, you get some weird LSD version of Rome. And we learned this the hard way, and especially with the Imperial Gardens, because most of the scenes were on position number 3 over there, and the balustrade, where the emperors and others would scheme all their dirty deeds. And I wasn't aware of this pixel problem, so we hit the wall right there, and Roland came to me steaming. So you can see how close the actors over there are at this balustrade, right in front of the pixel wall. And as soon as the camera came as close as that for a shot like this, it went crazy. I mean, you always have the option to work it out in post or to change the lens. But it's a thing that we learned, and in the graveyard especially, the action was right in the dead center. That was never going to happen to me again. So we were really making sure that we use exactly this part of the rotatable stage, the pivot, as where you want to have the focus of the camera.
And is this comparable to the Moret effect that we know from television cameras, from old? Is it basically a similar problem?
Yeah, I mean, the key problem with the Moret effect is, as you can see with the funky lizard over there, who escaped from the gardens on the wall, that you have this how do you say, like this orthogonal like square pattern of the LEDs, which matches perfectly with the sensor pattern of the camera. So at one point, when the one pattern hits the other one, you get this effect of all these pixels warping around, and the image is gone, and you have a problem. Yeah.
So the solution is stay rather away and focus on the.
It's a very complicated, and it's almost empirical, but play between the distance and the aperture of the. Is it aperture, like what width the lens has, right? How many millimeters is this? Where's the focal length? Thanks. Yeah, the focal length of the camera and the distance. So there. Should I take that? Back. So we just made our empirical rule. The camera has to stay off, I think it was 6 or 7 meters off the wall. And we followed that, and after the massacre at the Imperial Gardens, we were back on track again. Yeah.
Before we get to the winner, there is one question. I'm going to bring you my microphone really quick.
How did you solve that one problem in front of the wall that close? Did he change the lens? Or?
Yes, exactly. That's what he did. He changed the lens. There was one thing in those close-ups that had to be on this lens. We had to send to DNAC and say, guys,
the interlace.
Do us a favor. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for now? No? Well, then, Johannes, please let us know the winner of your different attempts. Oh, wait, sorry. You want to say something?
Oh, there you go.
Or just one fun fact, that's also the reason why we built the wall curved, right? It's meant for the camera to be mostly in the center and for the LED wall to have round about the same distance to the camera from anywhere. If you go too sharp an angle, you start to get a problem. There can be a color shift because you're seeing less of certain pixels, and there can be like weird issues with your focal length, right? Because some part of the image is always going to focus the wall. You want to have as straight a perspective on the wall, but of course we also don't want to have a straight wall where we force people to have like the Wes Anderson angles only.
We should have had you there. Okay, and I present the winning set. Ta-da! the audience chamber. It was really funny. Everybody who was on set was, okay, this was the best. And most of them didn't really know why, but they kind of felt when they looked at the screens, oh wow, this really works now. But we knew. You can see there already, there's two things before I circle back of how we perceive that. There's a few things I want to point out. Firstly, Rome is all the way back. I mean, the palace was in the center of Rome, right next to the Circus Maximus, but our virtual Rome was kilometers away. And that was fine, that worked really well. We had a very dark sky because this part of the audience chamber was a smaller part. I'll explain later. And as you can see, we have the light coming from this corner. The only option we had within the stage, obviously, to come right between the LED ceiling and the LED wall was through these corners, and we were trying to incorporate that into the full logic of it. So this is the best image I found of the actual audience chamber to Vespasian's times in the Imperial Palace. And that's a killer. I mean, if we would have gone for that design, we would have failed instantly. There's no edge treatment. It's the square for the round. It just would never have worked. So we decided to kind of take ideas from that, but design it to the virtual stage. And this is what we came up with. So as you can see, there's some atriums left and right. I don't recall anymore how these gardens were called that were inside. There's this little alcove in the back, and the pattern of the windows is still the same. But we introduced this little working space for Titus over here. We had curtains over there just to be able, again, to have our repoussoirs as much as we have, and we lifted it up. It's a couple of steps up to get this three-dimensional set. And then we knew our lights were going to come diagonally from here. Oh, well, is that feedback?
I think you were just safe. I think, maybe don't move further than that.
Okay, I'll stay here. So as you can see, we introduced our only light sources on the very top, everywhere. That meant if we were on the stage, we would hit right the point for some light fingers, some God rays to come from this direction and replicate these God rays digitally and have another way of volumetric light to bind to combine the virtual and the physical set. On the other direction, you'll recognize our gate. Obviously, we had to do this again. The shiny floors, we have a great framing. And we also have, with a couple of column rows here, like this column row, that column row, we had the opportunity to create depth again. And the most important thing also is, I will see that later. And then we had full control of replicating all the elements that we built for our central thing throughout the whole thing, obviously varying it and playing kind of a game with a formal language, but the whole space was kind of one thing, which I called virtual set deck earlier. And number 6, right in the center of the stage, that was where we put the table. This is where the focal length was, trying to always aim for the pivot. We had the different access points, so we could play different scenes, and more importantly, even in front of number 8 over there, we had some space so the actors could walk into the digital background, which would, again, break this magic border between physical and digital. So yeah, let's see the winner in motion. There's actually, don't be surprised, there's no sound to that one. It's just a couple of scenes. So you see back there are the virtual God rays. And I mean, honestly, if I didn't know what I did, I wouldn't know where the virtual starts. Rome in the distance works perfect, is always out of focus anyways. Then the table was much more glossy than you think, and even at nighttime, we had the moon coming from the same direction, and look now, for some magic reason, he walks into a virtual world.
And I assume this was late in production. It was
very late, yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that kind of proved that it was a steep curve. It was quite a journey to understand how virtual production works. But it was extremely rewarding to understand and to come to a point where everybody knew what he was doing, and we were all working together and we're getting quicker and quicker in achieving great results. Just one honorable mention, and I'm done. Now we are really done. It's 2 more slides, but it has to be an honorable mention to 2 and 2.5D backplates. I can't stress this enough. I think we came to a really good result in the end with Unreal Engine. But if you have a backplate that you filmed, be it on a couple of panels that you can have a parallax effect, or be it just a flat footage as well, it's like dynamite fishing. Make the set a little reflective, and you got it. And it's really cool. It worked in both cases.
And you used the metaphor of dynamite fishing as if that is really easy and effective.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah, I like to say that. Throw dynamite in the water and get the fish.
Just checking.
Sorry.
And, because we've heard 2.5D earlier also today. Could you just repeat it for us one more time? How do we differentiate 2D, 2.5D?
Right. So, I mean, 2D, 3D is clear, I guess. 2D is a simple plane, and then 2.5D means that you cut elements like a foreground hill and a background mountain, and maybe a church tower in the middle onto different plates. They're still 2D plates, but you can shift them against each other and thus create kind of an illusion of three-dimensional parallax effect.
And then you can also use with the tracking camera, I guess, to then have...
Exactly, and that's when you track and you move the camera around, and all of a sudden it feels like a three-dimensional world.
Well, thank you so much, Johannes. Johannes Mücke, thank you so much.
Thank
you. What a beautiful and generous opportunity that you give us all your insights and all your mistakes made and your lessons learned.
It's fun talking about that too, and it's also fun being. Ich würde viel lieber in Deutsch reden, aber it's fun to be back in Vienna, and yeah, I feel very at home here, and it's great. I like that. Thank you for having me.
And now the question is, if you have some questions for Johannes for how they made the Cinecittà Studios to Rome 79 AD, here comes the microphone.
Hi, I have 2 questions. What was your experience with using haze in front, in between the volume and the set? And the second question is, did you also try to defocus the image digitally directly on the wall? Or was it always sharp?
The image was always sharp. The depth of field and the defocus would only happen in camera, because you have everything in the real world sharp anyways. So this double effect. We tried that, but it made everything more 2D in a way, because you have this kind of artificial defocus and then the full focus on the rest. That didn't work for us. And similar results with physical fog or physical haze in the set. That has the same effect. It stops over there at the wall, and it creates more a border than an integration of the two things. So we were trying to avoid that. We tried it a few times on the floor, kind of, especially at this Vesuvius thing, in the attempt to trick the edge. And then when we had special moments like in this chariot race, okay, the fog was supposed to be a little bit of movement in the air, a little bit of sand or dust blowing towards them, but neither of them bared any good results. Yeah, it was working against integrating these two worlds. It was more kind of
that's so
trump of the stage, separating.
That's so fascinating, because it seems counterintuitive, because you feel like it merges the two worlds together.
Yeah. It didn't. That's why in fact, we tried all this, but it didn't. For us, it didn't work, at least. And the other problem was also, like every kind of particles, fog, sand dust, and all that were very troublesome. Cinecittà was always standing there, guys, stop killing our stage. But it really darkened down the stage. And that was a problem too, because light intensity went down by kind of the dust collecting in the little LED lights.
And did I understand this correctly? It was also a physical harm to the LED? No.
Yeah, harm. I actually don't know. I don't know if they're replaced or if they cleaned them. Probably both. But we had to at one point where I said, okay, guys, the IT was saying, guys, it doesn't work anymore. So we had to work against that. Oh, there you go. We got some insight.
Timo.
Timo.
So you can typically clean them. It's not like fog or fake snow is also really fun. Whoa, sorry. Fake snow is also really fun to work with. The biggest issue you have is it kind of destroys your black values. Same with the real fog on set. You don't get like the sharp contrast anymore. We've had success with both, but you really have to think about the backplate and your content, how that's going to work with the fog. You need to add more layers to get the real depth. Depth of field is also interesting. It can work, but it really needs to think about the camera, right? Because we do get the real depth of field to the wall, and then we kind of need the layers backwards, but digital depth of field isn't going to look like the camera depth of field. So we've also only used it with like really narrow focal length.
Like a little layer of haze in the air to create volumetric light. That was great. That was a big helper. That you get some volume to the light beams. That was great. But we had this experience that exactly what you're saying. It makes it so complicated to match either the lens or the level of fog, and then kind of to replicate it in CG. It was extremely fiddly, is what we thought, and once you change one parameter, it works against you again, and it just the whole image kind of collapses a little bit.
And since we're kind of looking to make the job of the color grader afterwards easier, right? We don't want to rotoscope all the actors and foreground elements. Our biggest focus is on keeping all the contrasts, all the black values, all the color as closely matched as possible, and that gets tricky real fast, especially if like the thing that makes the wall black is we have our small LEDs, and they are actually like plastic hue white, and then we have black shaders between them, so like black matte plastic that reflects as little light as possible. But if you put a lot of dust or like snow, fake snow, white stuff on it, you just don't have black anymore. And any bit of light, even just small practical or small film lights going in the vague direction, will suddenly light up everything.
Thank you so much, Timo, our joker, our info joker on the side. And there was another question. I come with the microphone.
Thanks a lot for all your insights.
You're very welcome.
It took me quite some time. I was working with the first LED the screen in Austria a couple of years back, and we had similar problems with it behind the camera. But what I found is it depends really on the choice of lenses if you use the digital defocusing in the background.
Oh yeah, really? Okay.
It really makes a difference when you use in the frustum, you use the digital depth of field in the virtual camera to match it. But it stops at a certain width of your lens.
You know what helped us as well, and that's not about depth of field, but more about light sensitivity. We shot with a Venice 2 from Sony, which turned out to be a fantastic camera for the LED wall, because you need so much less light, and you can sculpt your set with really dark environments and darken down stage so well. That was, after we tested a lot, the Venice 2 was our weapon of choice then.
And I'm sorry, I have a question for Timo.
Timo, stay here.
Yes. We had a lot of difficulties with the interlacing of the frames with the driver engine of the LED screen. We checked with the Venice, we checked with every other camera, and we barely got it solved. It probably was a controller issue. The Chinese people could not help us. Changing the LED wall could not help. What is your solution for those problems?
Very simple answer. If you got scan lines, you kind of have to brighten everything up on the wall. There is no proper way to get rid of it. I mean, if there's a technical issue and something doesn't work right, you're kind of, there's no way. But if everything's going right, then we have the camera calibrated to the wall. So we have a Genlock signal. The camera needs to take on Genlock. We need to make sure that there's the correct offset between the camera and the wall, so we don't have ghosting, so we don't record between two frames. And then there is the thing that the LED wall, LEDs don't have different brightnesses. If we display a dark green, we don't display a darker green. We display the full green for a shorter amount of time. That's kind of a trick to fool our eyes, but it's really difficult with a camera that has rolling shutter, which is basically all film cameras. And what happens is the darker we go, the slower it pulses. So at high brightness, we have a really, really quick pulse, and the camera is too slow to notice it. We don't have an issue. If we go to darker areas, it gets more and more challenging, and you can't get around it. Certain cameras are better, like the Venice 2 and the RE35 have really short readout times, which is the thing I care about. How long does the camera take to record the entire image? We have our 180-degree shutter angle, so we're recording for half the frame, but then we also need some time to read out. So shutter time and readout time combined are like from the first pixel on the left top of the frame to the last pixel on the right bottom frame. What that to read out. I'm sorry, it's probably a bit difficult to understand without a visual guide. But basically, instead of for 25 FPS, 40 milliseconds frame, we want to record 20 milliseconds in the camera, and then we have with these cameras like 3 more milliseconds of readout time. That's the rolling shutter, the weird skewing that you might see in the frame when you move really fast. The shorter that is, the better. The ARRI Mini LF, for example, has like 8 milliseconds, so that's a lot longer, and you have this issue much sooner. And then there's also the frequency of the panels, like what they typically operate at. And the slower that is, the earlier you run into issues. And at a certain point, you can't do anything against it. Then your material, your camera and your wall just don't support it. And if you have material that can work in theory, and it's just at certain dark areas, you have to bring everything up with your actual lights and bring everything down in camera. Ideally, also not by closing down the blender aperture.
I think so, yeah.
Because that also causes a color shift that kind of needs your grading afterwards a bit of extra work. That causes a bit of extra work. Ideally, you want to use an ND. And these are totally fine. They don't do anything, and they help us a lot.
That was a deep dive. Wow.
We will be testing these information later, so I hope you remember all the facts, because we're going to have a little questionnaire afterwards. Yeah, and then stick around. Are there any more questions? Just raise your hand. We have a microphone. Hannes is running with the microphone.
Thank you so much. I have 2 questions. First one is, what was the production process for you like in the production between the director, DP, and you? Like, what models what did you propose, and what was the production design like? And the second question is, you said that the stage was rotatable. Did you have shots where you like rotate the stage in shot to have like the reverse shot or whatever?
So the second one is a quick answer. No, we didn't have this. It rotates not that fast, and it's very mechanical. Maybe someone comes up with an idea how to use that, but it didn't seem to give anything to us that we could have used. And the first one is the production I'm with right now. There's little communication. I have to say, it's more like you suggest something, get an approval on it, then you suggest something. But in Rome, it was very different. As you said, Roland and I came together with Pete Travers, the VFX supervisor, who's also been on Roland's 3 last projects. And we lived together in a house, and we went every evening. We went for dinner and had wine. And there was actually this magic moment between Roland ordering a wine and the wine coming, that you had his full attention, because he didn't really know what to say, and you got him there. But if you're, I don't know what you're directing your question towards, but if you're directing it towards communication, it was the most casual and interested, and there's a couple of guys who want to figure this out and talk as much as they can. But maybe I misunderstand your question, or was that the direction of the question?
When you found out that columns work well, or windows, or gates, or whatever, that the director was okay with, okay, let's put a gate there.
That happened exactly in these moments between having a red wine, a pasta amatriciana, and figuring it out. Literally.
All right, okay.
There was this kind of communication. That was really fantastic, yeah. But again, I mean, I love that when you said that in the beginning, we fix it in prep, and that it's all about communicating with all departments. I've never worked so integral. Can you say that? Is that the right word? I don't know. Like
interdisciplinary.
Integrated, probably. Integrated with all the departments, really being willing to bring the best to the table. In other productions, sometimes making sure you kick the other one out and stand there. It wasn't about that. It was really constructive. No idea is a bad idea. No question is a stupid question. Figuring things out together. It worked really well.
Yeah, it really works best if everyone's open to it, because there is limitations, and you're going to run into challenges. There's typically, but there's also a lot of opportunity there, right? So long as everyone works together, especially like VFX needs to be included earlier. You need more preparation time before the day of shoot. And that's also intimidating, right? So in practice, putting all that money in before you have anything on camera is intimidating. Not really having that much experience with the wall is intimidating. And also, I don't know how exactly it is in Austria, but in Germany, like the kinds of funds you can get, they don't typically think about having VFX teams in pre-production. So just getting the budget in there is a challenge in reality, right? So there's a lot to do and think about there. But the more you prepare ahead of time, the more consistently and the higher volume you can shoot per day, right?
And it was also, I have to say that, it was also the longest part of the pre-production. I would say almost like 2 or 3 months. VFX was only Pete Travers and the VFX producer and 1 operator, and that was enough. That was fine. And I think there were 2 guys from DNAC with us, and you don't need the full production team. You need the heads sitting together and really wrapping their heads around that. And that showed on the Excel sheet in the end as well, because if you put that against a gigantic and often kind of nebulous fix it in post-production, to have just 7 people for a bit of an extra time, who are then going to spearhead this whole thing, it's mathematics. It did work, at least in our case.
Yeah, it really can work. And I have one more point. The thing about preparation, especially with VP, the moment you do run into major challenges, if the content is like handed on the morning on a hard drive or something, and you don't know if it runs smoothly, that time is really expensive. If you have the full set there, the full cast, all the technicians, and they're all just fiddling with their thumbs because the tech isn't working.
Like if a sudden moray happens on an imperial garden.
Yeah, exactly. And people first have to figure out what is happening and then think about what might be possible to overcome it. Like really a pre-light day is pretty much mandatory if you go to shoot in volume. So just one day with a reduced crew, you kind of need your DOP, your gaffer, like one AC something. You don't need your actors, you don't need your whole team. But just giving them some time to figure out the tech is really, really valuable because you don't want to spend that time with everyone on payroll, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the stage was constant. The screen was almost constantly running, also with VFX, with Pete and his team, just testing. It is really this journey. There's still every project comes with a new challenge. And you have to be willing to invest the time ahead of, as you said, every shooting day, every new set, every new setup. It's crucial. Yeah.
And it's also constant testing. That's also where DIT is really, really important. Yeah. You need someone to keep an eye on the image, and you need that quick turnaround time to figure out if something happens. Like, for example, a shoot a few weeks ago, we suddenly had a pattern in the wall, even though it was extremely out of focus. It was like 85 millimeters and 5 meters to the wall. We had no idea, but somehow that exact lens with that curvature had some issues in there. And that's something you can't see in your preview monitors. That's something you have to look at the final file you get from the camera to the DIT, who then checks through the files again, and then you can figure something out. But if that is only noticed like 2 weeks later in the editing room, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
I saw another question over there. There's a couple. I'm going to take, I guess, this one here first, and then we get to the second one later.
It's about technical thing on the engine. As it was 22, 23 in the production year, there was no Gaussian splatting. Would Gaussian splatting be an option for got more detailed background or go to more close-ups, more detail than we had the problem with the engine capacity?
You guys are running around.
I'm really enthusiastic about Gaussian splats, but they aren't really there, right? They aren't that implemented into Unreal Engine. They're really new on the scene. I've been kind of following them since Nerves. A different way of rendering Gaussian splats are like the efficient way of doing that. They help you get a scene quite quickly captured. It's still, so the tests that I know about so far work best if you do use proper good equipment. There's a couple of apps you can do it on your phone, and it's nice for a preview, but it's the quality of data you put in, that quality you get out. And then I've not had a production that used it, to be honest. I've done a couple of tests, and they were challenging because we didn't just do Gaussian splats. We had like individual objects, and matching them to everything else is still proving a challenge. But I'm very, very optimistic that a lot is happening there in the next months, years. And I'm hoping that it helps us with quite a few challenges. My biggest hope is that it someday will be usable for driving plates, because right now we have this challenge that when we're recording like a road somewhere, we need a car and we need the cameras that capture the footage like on top of it or something. And that's never the perspective the camera you're recording with is gonna have, right? If I wanna record it from the front of the car, I'm gonna have the actual camera on top of it. So the moment I drive around a corner or something, I have a weird angle. There's weird stuff happening. It's not correct. I would need like a semi 3D environment like Gaussian splats could provide. So optimistic, but not for an experimental production.
There was another question over there.
I promise there's a question somewhere in between. my long thing that I'm going to say. It's about Johannes. I felt I already had some experience because I've shot a project in a screen, but I feel after your presentation, I know a lot more. And the reason for that is, for a moment, I forgot that you were a production designer. I thought you were a cameraman or a director because you had so much insight in all of the departments. You know about how to stage the actors, where to place the camera, all the technical issues. And I think that really says something about how we need to approach this new technology. We need to be a much broader. We cannot just rely on our own expertise in what we've come up to learn. We have to, so the question is, did you know this already before you started this project, or how did you come to?
No, it was a merit of the communication with everybody, because David, why don't you come to the front as well? Gavros.
The David Vurara, who plays Gavros.
Yeah.
The expert trainer and former charity.
So David was also saying when he came to Rome, and he has been on so many productions, that like the atmosphere that Roland created there on this set was so family-like with everybody, and he was encouraging this kind of communication so much that everybody was learning, not necessarily from Roland, but from all the departments that he kind of integrated. And thanks for these nice words. And yeah, it was for me a gigantic learning curve. I felt like an imposter in the beginning.
It was most definitely a beautiful experience. I had done a few projects, and of course I was nervous because I'd never worked with a director like Roland. But he was completely welcoming, and Marco, and the production team, and the whole process was just family. We went to dinner every night. Roland wouldn't let anybody pay, which drove me crazy, but he was great. And we had conversations. We talked about the characters. We exchanged ideas, and he listened, and he really listened. And he would say, okay, let's try it. And if it didn't work, he would simply say, nah, that's not gonna work. If it worked, he would say, okay, let's see, what do you have? Show me what you got.
He's also happy to give the credit to someone else. Yeah, well, best idea wins. You know, it was really cool.
It was great.
Of that. Everybody learned. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I got the idea of the character, I had an idea what kind of approach I wanted with the character, and I wanted to stay as open as possible. So when I shared my ideas with Roland, he just simply said, show me. And that was pretty much the process. Every day was pretty much, he just trusted everybody. And Marco was the same. You see, you had two directors that worked differently. Marco is more, he explained. You make it clear, because we had a lot of young actors that didn't have a lot of experience. So he was very comforting with that. And Roland was pretty much the rock. He would pretty much listen to you, and he would just trust you to do what you got to do. So that was pretty much, it was a beautiful process for me.
And may I ask you, out of curiosity, because you've worked also with green screen or blue screen, and how would you say it was different with the virtual production?
I did a project for PlayStation. You know, we caption motion, and that was pretty different. And I also did green screen. With the LED, you were there. You pretty much, you could see the birds, you could hear the birds. You were pretty much there. You didn't have to think at all. You didn't have to, you just felt it. You were just there. And pretty much there's once I was on set, and I wasn't thinking, I was just walking around, and I walked into the wall because I'm thinking, oh, gee, I'm just gonna, and I went, boom, I was like, oh, okay.
And also,
you know, it was so real.
And also the horses felt it, because in one scene after a crash on the racetrack, we had horses on the stage. I think it was 1 or 2 horses standing there, 3. And then somebody from the operators pressed the button of these chariots racing towards us, and they all like, "What?"
And everybody freaked out because everybody was like, "Whoa, a horse is coming!" So it was just so real. But because it's so real and it's so good, so you don't really think about the process. You just feel the process. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense.
Made a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Timo? Let's a round of applause for David Burava as Gavros in Those About to Die. Thank you so much. And Timo?
Yeah, so maybe two anecdotes. One, it's really not to be underestimated. This thing causes motion sickness, especially with like driving plates. If everything is moving, I'm really conscious about pausing it or like giving actors, set designers, and so on a break, because it's just really all around you. It's the same thing of like VR headsets where you get motion sickness or simulation sickness.
And it's even worse. But it's even worse when you have a long crane and pull the crane out, and you have a warping sensation that without motion sickness, sometimes it might floor you because it's really weird. All around you, everything warps around. That's pretty scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a proper visceral reaction that your body has.
Yeah.
It's nothing you can do against it once if it affects you. And number two, something that you two started to touch on, a really big thing about LED screens is it brings more control back to the set, right? The crew that is there, the DOP that is there, instead of being in green, being in post-production where there's like a different people working on it, you can make more decisions on set with everyone involved, with the actors. You're there in the moment, making these choices.
And Roland did that a lot, by the way, and that was a beauty. We just showed this really quickly with moving the image over there. But he took his time to really first off to okay, where do we set the plane? So really, how close do we want to be? How high to really bring the plane in until we started moving camera, and then went to take this tree away. I want 2 trees here. Why is that building there? That doesn't make sense. Get it away. And you're like, oh shit, it was so nice. But it goes, and he does a lot of this. I mean, it took him, sometimes it took an hour or something to really compose the set when he finally sees it.
Yeah, and in the end, it's teamwork. You're fighting for the shots, for the great moments that get on screen.
Are there any more questions? Is everyone, I'm checking, is everyone still with us? Did we lose some of you? Did we lose all of you? Or is everything been answered? No more questions? Oh, one more hand. Oh, over here. Sorry. I guess I shouldn't bring this microphone because this is Timo's microphone now. Hannes, can you bring your microphone? I'll come back to you, Timo.
One last one. You just said that you use just front fill lights. For us testing, it was just cool to use like floating walls, also with LED content, like this the super screen, and just bring the lighting and warp it around, especially in columns and stuff like that.
We did that too. Yes,
you did.
That was very clever. To have animated lights, sumo skies, or floating walls. We had those. We actually had quite a few of them. I didn't say that.
The more you have in the front, the more it gets easier also to demorate and stuff in the back because you get the brightness up. Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
But I never saw it on the pictures. You took it away.
No. We had it for balcony scene. We brought them in, and we had them in place already because we had in a different set where we had the palace interiors. We had some windows that were of significance where we had to have some mobile walls behind that, and those we brought a few times in for, I would say 5 or 6 times to add, just like you said. We didn't have sumo skies, though.
Just the lighting.
Yeah.
One slight tale of caution. Moire is about the distance between your camera sensor and the wall. That goes for reflections too. So a very common issue is if you put a car in here, use the top ceiling for reflections on the windshield. If you put the ceiling too low down, the distance to the actor behind the screen and the distance through the reflections on the top ceiling is pretty much the same, and you start to get more ray in the front windshield. So when using these movables, also keep in mind that there can be more ray in those again.
Yeah. Here's a question from me, because nobody ever answered that. Why the hell are those in a square pattern? Why don't you use a hexagonal pattern for the LEDs or some random pattern or something?
It's a resolution issue.
Is it?
But did you ever test, I'm sorry, did you ever test an opera or something if you have those problems? Because what we used is we used an opera or a gauze in front of just the screens that are not on the frustum, and that helps changing the distance to it, because that gets rid of it. If you just need the lighting for it.
But you lose contrast, right? If it's an in-camera frame. In-frame. Outside, yeah. That's a different thing, yeah.
Yeah, for the reflections and stuff, that can work. It can be a challenge to get those nicely fitted to this screen, because the moment, like if you put it on a ceiling panel, you have it kind of bowing down, and then you have uneven light coming from it, and you have different issues again. You're always fighting for something somewhere.
That's good final words.
Wonderful final words. If there are no more questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Timo Müssig and the whole team, also Thomas Stirnhofer and Katja Köstler. Let's have another huge round of applause for the team of LEDcave and HQ7 Studios and the entire crew working so hard to make this happen. A huge round of applause for Johannes Smücke for sharing the insights and the learning lessons from those about to die. And also David Wurava, who was on set, who brought us his experience from the set. And thank you for coming, for staying, for talking, and for learning. I definitely learned a lot. I'm trying to find one final virtual future finale sentence, but I cannot think of anything. Johannes, I'm sure you have something.
I go with Timo. We're always